Okay, we're going to start again. Turn to page 890 and look at the facing page. That's vocabulary cards. And let's look at the first card on the page. It says acute triangle. Acute means that all three angles are less than 90 degrees. Remember, a 90-degree angle looks like the corner of a box. Okay, so all of these are less than 90 degrees. This card says attribute. That means characteristic. The characteristics of this triangle are that all sides are 2 centimeters and each one of those angles is acute or less than 90 degrees. Okay, let's turn the page. And we have another chapter 12, lesson 3, and that's an equilateral triangle. Equilateral means that the sides are equal and the angles are all equal. And notice that all these angles are less than 90 degrees. So an equilateral triangle is also an acute triangle. Okay, look at the second column of cards, the next to the last one, and that says isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has 2 sides that are equal. And notice that all of its angles are less than 90 degrees. Then the next one is an obtuse triangle, and you can always tell an obtuse triangle because one of its angles is bigger than 90 degrees. Okay, let's turn the page. Turn the page. And look at the second column, the first one. And that first one is a right triangle. It's called a right triangle because it has one angle that is 90 degrees. And again, you can see that it looks like the corner of a box. Notice that a right triangle can never be an equilateral triangle. None of its sides would be equal. You could have it as an isosceles triangle, or you could have it as a scalene triangle. Isosceles means it has 2 sides equal. Scalene means no sides are equal. In this case, none of the sides are equal. Okay, now turn in your books. We're going to skip and we're going to go to page 915. And let's look at 915. You can classify triangles using one or more attributes. An attribute is a characteristic of a figure, like side measures and angle measures. Look at example 1. The Hammond family traveled from Columbus, Ohio, to Dallas, Texas, and then to Atlanta, Georgia, before returning home. The distance of each flight is shown on the map. Find the number of congruent sides. The length of the sides of the triangle are 924 miles, 573 miles, and from Dallas to Atlanta is 729 miles. 729 miles. How many sides of the triangle are congruent? None of them. None of them are the same. So we're going to put a double 0 here. None of them are the same. Let's remind ourselves about what to call triangles. An isosceles triangle has 2 sides that are equal, or 2 sides congruent. They're the same. An equilateral triangle has all 3 sides that are the same. And a scalene triangle has no sides that are congruent or the same. So our triangle up here is scalene because none of its sides are equal. All right, let's look at page 916. Triangles form the sides of the Khafre pyramid in Egypt. Determine the number of acute, obtuse, or right angles in the triangle. Let's look at our triangle here. It's outlined in red. How many angles of the triangle are acute? Well, none of them form a 90-degree angle, do they? They're all less than 90 degrees, so that's 3 angles are acute. How many are obtuse? That means bigger than 90 degrees, and none of them are bigger than 90 degrees. So we put a 0 there. How many angles of the triangle are right? Remember, a right angle looks like the corner of a box. None of them are, so we have another 0 here. Okay, another way to classify triangles is by their angles. The acute triangle has 3 acute angles, or angles that are less than 90 degrees. That's 90 degrees right there. The right triangle has 1 right angle, that means 90 degrees. The other 2 are less than 90 degrees, so they are called acute angles. And then the obtuse triangle has an angle that's bigger than 90 degrees. And the other 2 angles are acute, or smaller than 90 degrees. So the triangle in example 2 is acute because all 3 of them are acute angles, or less than 90 degrees. Okay, let's look at guided practice. Number 1, classify the triangle based on its sides. Well, it has 2 sides that are equal. How many sides of the triangle are congruent? 2. The triangle is an isosceles because it has 2 congruent sides. Classify the triangle based on its angles. All of its angles are less than 90 degrees, so it is acute. It has 3 acute angles, so it's an acute triangle. Okay, let's look at page 917. Determine the number of congruent sides for each triangle, then classify the triangle based on its sides. Okay, well, let's look at this one. Each one of its sides is a different length, so none of its sides are equal, so it is a scalene triangle, no sides equal. Let's look at this one. 2 of these are congruent, so this is an isosceles triangle. It has 2 equal sides. Okay, now it says classify each triangle based on its angles. Well, let's look at this one. There's an obtuse angle. It's bigger than 90 degrees. So it is an obtuse triangle. This one has 3 angles that are smaller than 90 degrees. They're called acute angles, so this is an acute triangle. This one has an angle that's 90 degrees, looks like the corner of a box. So this is a right angle, and it's called a right triangle because it has a right angle. This one has 3 acute angles, 3 angles less than 90 degrees, so it is an acute triangle. Okay, it says draw each triangle. They want us to draw an equilateral triangle here. Well, that would be a triangle with 3 equal sides. And here they want a right triangle. So it has to have a right angle or a 90-degree angle. It's called 90 degrees. Let me show you why it's called 90 degrees. There are 360 degrees in a circle. And if we cut it in half both ways, cut it into fourths, each one of these angles is 90 degrees. 4 times 90 is 360. And each one looks like the corner of a box. Okay? All right, let's look at page 918. Number 11. says half of a rectangular sandwich looks like a triangle. Classify it based on its angles. Well, here we have a right angle. So this is a right triangle. Number 12 says, measure the sides of the sandwich, classify the triangle based on its sides. Well, none of these sides are equal. We know it started out as a rectangle. That means its length is bigger than its width, and then it's cut diagonally, and that's longer than both of these sections. So we have no sides equal, so it is shaped like a scalene triangle. Okay, let's look at this. Draw a conclusion. Emma, Gabriel, Jorge, and Michaela each drew a different triangle. Use the clues below to describe each person's triangle as isosceles, equilateral, or scalene, and also as acute, right, or obtuse. So for each person, we're going to be using two different shapes or two different triangles. So we're going to start with Gabriel. And Jorge. Emma, and I'm leaving space to write the kinds of triangles they have. And Michaela. Okay, here we go. Gabriel and Jorge each drew a 90-degree angle in their triangles. So they both have right triangles. Gabriel's triangle does not have any congruent sides. No congruent sides means no sides equal, and that means scalene. One angle in Emma's triangle measures greater than 90 degrees. Well, greater than 90 degrees means it's obtuse. Each side of Michaela's triangle and two sides of Emma's and Jorge's triangles are 4 centimeters long. So Michaela has a triangle with each side equal. So that means hers is equilateral. Emma and Jorge have two sides that are 4 centimeters long. So that means theirs are isosceles. Now what about her? She's got an equilateral triangle. That means that all of her angles are acute. So hers is also an acute triangle. How do I classify triangles using their attributes? Include a sketch of each type of triangle. Okay, well, I can classify triangles based on the number of congruent sides or by the angle measures. So the number of congruent sides and the measurement of the angles. And now they want us to draw each type of triangle. Okay, so let's see, let's draw a right triangle. There's the 90-degree angle. Here we have an isosceles with two equal sides and an obtuse oops, anyway, with an angle that's bigger than 90 degrees. Okay, page 919. There's a large pyramid standing in front of the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. The sides of the pyramid are shaped like triangles. Classify the red triangle based on its angles. All right, let's look at it. Each one of those angles is less than 90 degrees. So there are 3 acute angles. So the triangle formed by the side of the pyramid is an acute triangle. Look at number 1. Determine the number of congruent sides, then classify the triangle based on its sides. None of its sides are equal. How many sides of the triangle are congruent? None. So a big old 0 there. So the triangle is a scalene triangle because none of its sides are equal. All right, let's look at this part. Fill in each blank with the correct terms or numbers to complete each sentence. Number 2, an equilateral triangle is a triangle with 3 congruent sides. An acute triangle is a triangle with blank angles, each less than, okay, well that would be 3 angles, each less than 90 degrees. An obtuse triangle is a triangle with one angle that is greater than 90 degrees. Okay, your homework for tonight is page 920. You're going to do all of page 920 and then put it in your assessment folder. Be sure you answer all the questions that they're asking you in each one of these.